In 1991, two hikers in the Alps stumbled across something frozen into the ice. At first, they thought it was trash. Then they thought it was a lost climber. Then they realized they were looking at a man who had been dead for over 5,000 years, preserved so perfectly that scientists could still study his stomach contents, his last meal, the condition of his joints. And when they got him into a lab and started examining his skin, they found something that changed how we think about ancient humans forever. He was covered in tattoos, over 60 of them, lines and crosses across his back, his wrists, his knees, his ankles. Not random, placed with intention. And the question that's been sitting with researchers ever since is simple. Why? Why would a man living in the Copper Age, thousands of years before writing, before cities, before most of what we consider civilization, spend hours in pain getting permanently marked on purpose? This is the story of why ancient humans got tattoos, and the answer is weirder, older, and more emotional than you would ever expect. Let's start with Otzi, because he's the most famous case and honestly the best entry point. His tattoos weren't on his face or his arms, where people would easily show them off. They were on his lower back, his knees, his ankles. Places that frankly aren't together for flexing in front of your friends around the fire. So researchers did something clever. They mapped his tattoos against his skeleton and found that almost every single one sat directly on top of a joint that showed signs of degeneration, arthritis, wear and tear, old injuries. And here's where it gets genuinely wild. Those exact spots, they line up almost perfectly with acupuncture points still used today. Thousands of years before acupuncture as a documented medical system existed in writing, someone in the Alps may have been using ink the same way a modern practitioner uses needles. Pain management, therapy, medicine etched permanently into the skin. Think about that for a second. Tattoos, the thing we associate with rebellion, with self-expression, with regret at 19, might have started as healthcare. But Otzi isn't alone. And this is where the story stops being about one guy in the ice and starts being about something much bigger. Travel south to ancient Egypt and you'll find mummies with tattoos dating back over 5,000 years. For a long time, archaeologists assumed these were limited to women, specifically dancers, musicians, or people of low status. Case closed, move on. Except newer imaging techniques on older mummies kept finding tattoos that earlier researchers had simply missed because the ink had faded into the skin over millennia. When they re-examined a male mummy from around 3000 BC using infrared imaging, they found tattoos of a wild bull and a sheep on his upper arm, symbols of strength, of status, possibly of protection. The story wasn't women only. It was bigger, older, and far more widespread than anyone had given it credit for. Now go east into Siberia. And the evidence gets even more dramatic. The Prehistoric culture, nomadic horse riders from around 2500 years ago, buried their dead in frozen tombs that acted like nature's own deep freezers. When archaeologists opened these tombs, they found bodies with skin so well preserved you could see the tattoos as if the person had gotten them last week. Swirling images of deer, leopards, mythical creatures covering entire limbs. These weren't crude marks. These were detailed, confident artwork done by someone who had clearly done this before. A specialist, possibly a profession. As far as 2500 years ago, in the middle of Eurasian steppe, there were people whose job, or at least whose skill, was tattooing other people. So now we have three completely separate ancient cultures, the Alps, Egypt, and Siberia, all independently arriving at the same idea, permanently marking the body with meaningful imagery. And when you see something show up independently across cultures with no contact with each other, that's usually a signal that you are looking at something deeply human, not a regional fad. So let's talk theories. Why would this behavior emerge again and again? Theory 1, and we already touched on this with Otzi, is medicine. Pain relief, healing rituals, and marking the body where it hurts in a way that's both physical and symbolic. In a world without modern medicine, anything that provided even psychological relief from chronic pain had a real value. Theory 2 is status and identity. In the Prehistoric tombs, the most elaborately tattooed individuals tended to be buried with the richest grave goods. The tattoos may have functioned as a visual record, almost like a resume written on skin. This person hunted this animal. This person achieved this rank. This person belongs to this group and not that one. In a world without ID cards, your body was your ID card. Theory 3, and this one is genuinely chilling if you think about it long enough, is protection. Many ancient cultures believed certain symbols could ward off evil spirits, disease, or misfortune. Some Egyptian tattoos found on female mummies were placed specifically on the lower abdomen and thighs, areas associated with fertility and childbirth, leading researchers to believe that they may have functioned as a protective charms during pregnancy, a time when death rates for both mother and child were brutally high. Now here's where we have to address the skeptic in the room, because it's a fair point. Maybe we are reading too much into this. Maybe sometimes a tattoo is just decoration. Just because something looks symbolic to us doesn't mean it carries deep spiritual weight to the person wearing it. And honestly, that's probably true sometimes. But here's the thing that makes this so fascinating. It doesn't actually matter which theory is correct for any individual case, but all three of these reasons, medicine, identity, and protection, are still exactly why people get tattoos today. Someone gets a tattoo to mark surviving an illness. Someone gets a tattoo for their family crest, or their unit number, or a symbol that represents who they are and where they come from. Someone gets a tattoo of a saint, or a cross, or a symbol they believe will protect them. We never actually stopped doing any of this. We just stopped thinking of it as ancient. There's also a detail about the process itself that doesn't get talked about enough. Getting a tattoo with ancient tools wasn't quick. We are talking about hand poking with sharpened bone, wood, or stone, dipping repeatedly into the pigment, often soot or ash mixed with some kind of binding agent, and pushing that into the skin, one tiny puncture at a time. For something the size of Otzi's large markings, that could mean hours, possibly spread across multiple sessions of sustained, deliberate pain. And people did it anyway, over and over, across cultures, across thousands of years, completely independently of each other. That's not a small detail. That tells you that whatever benefit people believed they were getting, status, healing, protection, identity, it was worth real suffering to obtain. Humans have never needed convincing that something meaningful is worth a little pain. We have just changed the symbols. So why did ancient humans get tattoos? The honest answer is probably all of it, layered on top of itself, depending on the person, the culture, and the century. Medicine for some, identity for others, protection, status, memory, grief, belonging, all carried on the skin, because skin is the one thing every human being has always had with them, everywhere they went until the day they died. And that's the part that gets me. Otzi has been dead for over 5,000 years. His tools are gone. His clothes are mostly gone. His name, his language, his entire world gone. But his tattoos are still there, still visible, still telling us something about who he was and what mattered to him 5 millennia later. If you've got a tattoo or you're thinking about getting one, you're not doing something modern. You're doing something ancient, something that connects you directly to a man frozen in the Alps, to nomads buried in the frozen tombs of Siberia, to people standing in front of mirrors in ancient Egypt deciding what story they wanted their skin to tell. So tell me, what would your skin say about you if it had to last 5,000 years? Let me know in the comments.